The Wyatt Six and American Made that started off the show,
Mhm.
and I'll say it's not a bad match. It's a fun match. Uh, I think coming off of All Out and coming off of that level of violence, and then coming to the first thing you see from WWE in the week
Yeah.
is a hardcore match or street fight, right? It felt lacking. Like, and
Mhm.
it's like when I say lacking, it's like it's no different than any street fight that WWE's produced in the last 10 years. But
Mhm.
relative to what I just came off of, I'm like, all right, at one level, I feel like it's a bit extreme. And one level, it feels a little bit of tame.
Yeah.
And this is before I even seen the article. I was just having this thought. I'm like, this is not a bad match. And any if I wasn't predisposed to All Out just 24 hours ago, this is a
Yeah.
mid rising of a match. But coming off that, it makes me question. I'm like, okay, WWE, you can elevate your violence a little bit more.
Mhm.
AEW, you can kind of maybe there's a middle. I think both can reach.
I think you're saying like when we were talking about when House of Dragon season 1 first came out and Rings of Power, you're like, oh, I got this the mature,
Yeah,
adult violence of House of Dragon versus, Rings of Power, which is like TV 14. You're like, it's not even a contest. Like at least just
yeah,
in the violence department, like, but that's AEW leans into it. Like they know like that's what they do. So
yeah.
yeah, it's their strength over if,
But
if in
I
any
think
category, it's definitely a strength over WWE. I mean, WWE could, I feel like, this CM Punk and Drew McIntyre that could hit that level of violence, but
as
I
a
think it would just
WWE
be
audience,
different.
you're
Yeah,
predisposed to be like, if you see blood, you'd be like, oh my god, it's blood, right? Like, geez, like it's gotten really serious. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it's just like, it's used to kind of to I would say it's used to kind of show that something has gotten serious, right? I think AEW, because they use blood so much, you're so desensitized to it
hmm
that there a lot of the weight is just get lost because it's like everybody bleeds.
yeah,
It
that's like
doesn't
a
feel
normal thing for. It's not. Yeah, it's not as like if somebody bleeds, it's not as like damaging as you would think in kayfabe, like it is in
yeah.
WWE. Because like the
Like Cody
winners
bleed like
matches,
not to jump, but like Cody blood last night. And
yeah,
it's like, okay, but that was a situation where it just felt like you bled, but then all of a sudden you stop bleeding. You know what I'm saying?
hmm
Like, so like did you blade yourself? And if you did, fine. But like I'm more like inclined to like if the cut came natural, totally fine with it. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't do nothing about it. You'd hate to see it, but I think in certain cases, WWE, it is a public company with public shareholders. You know what I'm saying?
hmm
And you're Disney.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? You just can't do the level of stuff that AEW does. But if again to the article's point, like AEW, you can't just be ECW, right? It's like even back in the day when WWE wasn't even doing hardcore stuff and ECW was the hardcore place, they didn't WWE just didn't start doing everything that ECW was doing. They
yeah,
saw what ECW was doing and then they were like, we're gonna WWE-fy it,
yeah,
right? And so I think there's a little bit of I can see WWE doing that, and Triple H comes from that era, so he's not unfamiliar with that type of stuff. But I do think there is a way to commercialize it a little bit more than how AEW does it, and I think AEW should find ways to commercialize it. I think in both ends, they can meet in the middle on this subject matter. I
yeah,
think there's a happy medium, and I think I don't necessarily mean they need to both be the same because I do think AEW, if you want to be seen as an alternative, this is your alternative. But I don't think you need to be as gruesome as you think you need to be, especially if you're
yeah,
trying to make money. Because like, who are you really doing this for? Because there's shock value and then there's entertainment.
yeah. I think they walk the line pretty well. I mean, I think with, oh yeah, we don't got to get into it. I think you Yeah, it's a razor's edge for AEW for sure. They are the extreme ones right now. So it's like they just got to be very conscious of that. With that being said, I think it's a strength of theirs, at least at this point in time, like looking at, the production of their shows, and like, at least like you said, it's a good alternative because it does, maybe it's for those. I mean, for me, I can take it. It's not, with the exception of like, literally the plastic bag we were just talking about. It's like, all
Yeah.
right, that was, something that I felt like overstepped its bounds. But
I mean, again,
all
I
right,
come
it's a
from it not as like, am I put off by the violence? I mean, again, there's movies that I watch like, is this even necessary? It's
mhm,
not even like I'm put off by the violence. Like, is it necessary to go this far? Like, how did we get here? Right. And
mhm,
so a lot of the violence is like, if it's predicated by some actual substance and a story that makes sense to actually, like I said, I do think the needles and the cinder blocks a little bit too far. The unprotected share shots is still unacceptable in my head. I don't care if it's gimmicked or not. Like, there's no need to be doing that stuff
mhm,
in 2024. But again, with the context of, yeah, you burned this man's house down and all of this right, like this is, it makes sense how you got to this level of violence.
yeah,
But even like the street fight that we talked about, I thought that was great.
yeah. Yeah,
You know
that
what I'm
was my other
saying?
premium
Like,
match. Yeah,
you know what
or
I'm
top
saying?
shelf.
So it's
Excuse me.
like that, like if I think if that was a level of WWE, and you can't give that match every time, right? And you can't give
Mhm,
it for free on Raw. You can maybe
yeah,
once in a while if it's like a very special episode, but like that's something you pay for.
for sure.
And so I just think that like I can't remember a time that WWE's been that violent like that.
Mhm,
Like their violence is very, it feels like it feels like a movie set rather than like people actually like
I'd
scrapping.
say the last time it would be is probably Mick Foley. Mick Foley is the one that was like the most violent. That it was like, this is like the stuff that he did. Like, you talking about hardcore legend stuff,
Yeah.
obviously falling from Hell in a Cell. That's all we need to say. Like, don't ever do that again. That crossed like multiple, like not the line, but yards. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Getting
I mean,
thrown
the
through a
most
cell twice.
closest
Like,
you could probably get is like what? Like maybe Edge?
yeah, since then, yeah. Because he took over that hardcore mantle literally in that
Maybe Randy?
match.
Randy? I don't even know if
Yeah.
Randy like got like that. Like he had matches with Mick,
Hmm.
right? But like he wasn't like Triple H level of like, doing some gruesome
Yeah,
stuff. So like again, if
exactly.
we have to go back to the Attitude Era and say like that is like the best hardcore match that I've seen since
Yeah.
Royal Rumble 2000, 2001, it's like, come on now, that's wild.
Yeah.
So I do think there's a level of WWE. It's like, yeah, we're technically still in PG, so we'll see what happens when we reach into January. But that's only just for Raw. But we'll see what happens when we get into like the actual like premium events once we get into this new era of programming.
That's
But
yeah.
I do think there is as the title of that Bleacher Report article says, there's a fine line between mainstream and what is read the full up. Fine line between mainstream and niche when it comes to
Yeah.
violence. And I do think that I don't think I don't think each of them are too far off. I do think in one sense they can kind of AEW could be, right center and
Yeah.
WWE could be left center. They don't need to be directly center, but you can
Yeah.
lean towards your size, but there is a little
Yeah. Yeah.
bit
Yeah.
of we could borrow from what AEW does or even go back into our history bag of what
Hmm.
we used to do. You know what I'm saying? And AEW, you gotta figure out like where is the medium of
This is the last thing I want to say on this, is because the reason that I'm going to say that, yeah, I think definitely the plastic bag, but like I think that the swerve and Hangman, like you said, with the context, all of that was appropriate. Even the chair shot for me, I'm okay with that because it was obviously gimmicked, and I understand that it's not, for everyone. So I have absolutely nothing to say about that. Right? This was the first time that I looked into CZW, like was coming
Mhm.
off of All Out. So I think that says something about the level of violence that was there, because CZW is basically the modern ECW, Combat Zone Wrestling, and I subscribed to them on YouTube just recently. Like, doing my research, and it's like, yeah, these guys are using like the fluorescent light tubes, all the old school
Mhm.
ECW spots. They're still doing them. There's it's basically that. So I think that says something about it. But that, yeah, I would say All Out should probably be their cap of violence, and that's with Swerve and Hangman with all that context. That should
Yeah.
be probably the cap. Like you
And
could
I
you
said
can try and make it different, but not more than that. Like I don't need to see Hangman actually hanging. I mean, I guess Swerve did that already to him. So it's like if you're gonna try and find something more extreme, it's like, all right, what are we doing here? Basically, that's where I'm at with it.
yeah. I mean, like I said, like I could take this out even out of wrestling. Like I said, I look at it from a more entertainment aspect. Like there's a movie I watched earlier this year called In Violent Nature, and there's a brutal kill scene in that
Yeah,
movie. It is one of the gnarliest ones I've ever seen. It's pretty dope, actually, the
yeah,
way it plays out. But as I was watching it, I'm like, come on, dog. She didn't even do anything. She was out here
mm,
minding her own business. And like you just being like cruel at this point. Like, is this even necessary? Like, and that's where it's like, yeah, I can appreciate like the creativeness of the kill in the movie,
yeah.
but was this necessary? Did you need to be that brutal? So that's where it's
Yes,
like, that's where I'm
yeah,
like, there's a fine line between like,
yeah,
if you gave me some substance of like why this person deserved this such a gruesome death, have at it.
yeah.
She ain't doing nothing but mind her own business. She don't even know what's going on. And you just, bow. I was like, bro, it's sick. It's dope, but she ain't deserve that.
Yeah.